Thank you all so much for being here and welcome to the National Civic League's Promising Practices webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about the need for difficult conversations for the sake of democracy, the art of disagreeing. My name is Rebecca Trout and I direct the National Civic League's DC office and All-America City Award. For those of you less familiar with the League, we are a 128-year-old nonpartisan nonprofit. What we seek to advance civic engagement to create more equitable and thriving communities. We seek to accomplish our mission through three main programs: our direct on-the-ground community assistance work, our research and publications, and then, of course, our flagship program, the All-America City Award. The All-America City Award was started in 1949 to recognize examples of outstanding civic engagement in communities that are solving local challenges through collaborative problem solving. So we use the award to really lift up and recognize those communities. And then we use this monthly webinar series to share those promising practices as well as other resources and ideas to add to communities' toolbox of civic engagement, if you will. So before we dive into this particular tool in that civic engagement toolbox, I can't help myself but to make a plug for this year's All-America City Award. We are focusing this year on recognizing communities that are strengthening democracy through local action and innovation. Very apt topic for this year and also very related to this month's webinar topic. So we are in kind of the final stages of seeking out those applications. So those applications are due mid-February. There are some projects here on your screen that you'll see that might fit into an application, one of which might be relevant to this audience. So if you're working on bridging divides across political, social, economic differences, and you've had some success in your community, we'd love to hear about it in an All-America City Award application bid. We have a wonderful informational webinar, which I will send out in my follow-up email, as well as an offer for a one-on-one call with me if you're considering applying. But today we're talking about one of the ways that you can strengthen democracy locally, and that's by ensuring that we can all still have conversations with one another, even when we disagree. So helping us flesh out this topic and discuss it more are the four individuals you see here on your screen. We have Carissa Raskin from the Listen First Project, Manu Meal from Bridge USA, Shelley Hoy from 92NY, and Liz Joyner from the Village Square. They have a wonderful agenda out for you today. And before I hand it off to them, just a few housekeeping items. You'll notice that when you joined us, you were all muted. We ask that you remain so at least until we get to the Q&A portion. Once we open it up for questions at the end, you're allowed to unmute yourself, use that raise hand feature, or type your questions into the chat. We are recording this webinar, and the recording as well as the slides will be emailed to you under that email address that you registered for. And with that, I'm happy to welcome Carissa Raskin. Carissa?
Thanks so much, Rebecca, and thanks everyone for joining us today to hear our presentation and learn a little bit more about the work that not just one of our organizations is doing, and honestly, not just the four of our organizations is doing, but really more in the spirit of collaboration. You're going to get to hear about a collective impact movement to bridge divides in America. And that comes from this cohort of organizations that you see listed on this slide, and many, many more that make up the Bridging Movement Alignment Council. So I'm going to start off our presentation today sharing a little bit more about what BMAC is and the role that we here at specifically Listen First Project play in BMAC. And then I'm going to gladly turn it over to the partner organizations that make up BMAC to share exactly why we do what we do, lifting up the very important, relevant work that is the example of bridging divides, and specifically around a pretty cool initiative we're leaning in together on this year. But we're going to start at the beginning. And the beginning is long, so I do apologize for the length of this definition. I will caveat that with, this is a testament to how collectively we work. This definition of what it means to be a bridge builder, bridging itself, actually is derived from the mission statements, values, programmatic offerings, and key core themes that the 100+ organizations in the Bridging Movement Alignment Council have for their own organizations. It is as comprehensive as we can make it, and there's a lot of text, so I'm gonna read it to you to help us level set. So, bridging is the intentional bringing together of people or perspectives that are currently disconnected or divided. We build bridges for the purpose of cultivating understanding, curiosity, trust, empathy, respect, relationships, shared identity, and common ground. We advance the practices of listening, constructive conversation, community building, and collaborative problem solving, both at the grassroots and leadership levels. The ultimate goal of bridging is social cohesion and collaboration, which are critical to a thriving, resilient, strong, peaceful nation and a healthy culture amidst deep differences. Bridging creates hope and a way forward together amidst the personal pain and national fear caused by toxic polarization. So a true highlight there on the collaborative, the collective, and leaning into a common agenda that really is social cohesion. You can move to the next slide, Rebecca. And so, like I said, we do this together through what we call the Bridging Movement Alignment Council. It is a collective impact initiative. If anyone here is familiar with what that means, this slide kind of depicts the totality of a characteristic of collective impact. We are organized as a growing body. Roughly 109 organizations now make up BMAC. And we have included in that members of a steering committee that help to drive the work of our collective impact model. We have working groups that help us to drive. They are the engines of our collective impact, working concretely on tangible products and on capacity building initiatives that benefit not just our individual organizations, but the field at large. And the role that Listen First Project is so proud to play is that backbone support for the collective impact model in general. And you'll see here on the left, these are some of the core principles, not just of our collective impact initiative, but really what constitutes being a collective impact model, that we have measures of shared measurement and tracking data, that we have mutually reinforcing activities across all of our organizations. We are fundamentally based on strong communication and trust with one another, and that we do our very best to stay as aligned and coordinated as possible. This is a photo. We were at the National Constitution Center in July of last year. These are members of our BMAC steering committee. You'll recognize some faces from those presenters today, as well as a myriad of others who are leaders in the Bridging Divides field. And it was a very proud moment to be at the National Constitution Center for this gathering. This slide, I'm going to do my best to unpack for you. This is essentially a depiction of what we do at BMAC and as BMAC. We are a movement that this top gray bar really describes at the highest of level our theory of change, that we strive to build capacity of the Bridging Divides field in order to achieve broad mobilization of everyday Americans across the country to help provide the will, skill, knowledge, resources, desire to bridge divides. And once we have accomplished that broad mobilization, our ultimate goal is to lead to these societal conditions changing that you see in the green boxes all the way on the right-hand side of the screen. And we do this through our collective strategies. So we are building capacity of the bridging field. We are doing it through a myriad of ways. And under broad mobilization, you'll notice that we do it by focusing on individual sectors. We do it by activating local communities, which many of you are representative of local communities that are already doing phenomenal bridging work. And we do it in the form of executing national campaigns, one of which you're going to get to hear a little bit about today, thanks to Manu's presentation. So I mentioned this backbone role, and I'm happy to be on the team at Listen First Project. We serve as the backbone for the Bridging Movement Alignment Council and the larger Listen First Coalition, which is made up of 500 plus organizations that are all working towards bridging divides. Really, and I'll try to explain the difference or kind of the elevation of how BMAC falls into that. We have 500 plus organizations that are all leaning into bridging divides in their own way, doing phenomenal work. What allows BMAC to be BMAC in its collective impact capacity is organizations, the 109 that I mentioned earlier, have, in addition to doing what they're doing, said, we are going to lean in together and work collaboratively and collectively through working groups on shared goals and common agendas to advance initiatives that we and our steering committee have determined are the core focus, the top priority of our engagement this year. And so we have a lot of power in that shared agenda and mission. And BMAC helps, Listen First Project helps to keep those engines flowing, if you will. We exist not to elevate any of our own programs. We actually don't have any programs of our own. We exist purely to elevate and support the work of the movement, of the members of our coalition and the members of the Bridging Movement Alignment Council. And we do that through project management, coordination, collaboration, aligning priorities, organizing and supporting our working groups, collective fundraising. We try to stay in the background as much as possible. Not displayed well by my presentation today, but typically we are behind the scenes. And the next two slides are really just an overview for you all of what we as the Bridging Movement Alignment Council were able to collectively accomplish in 2023. There are links in here that you're welcome to explore, but it kind of just gives you the breadth of ways in which, because we have such strong engagement from our partners, all that we are able to accomplish. We have, really advanced our goals and measures program and actually launched a resource hub so that all of the partners across BMAC are able to, and beyond actually BMAC, have a mechanism for assessing the impact of their own programs and how well they're moving on bridging divides in America. We have started to very heavily engage the entertainment industry with the launch of Bridge Entertainment Labs. We're developing a badging and micro-credential program. So if you and your organizations might be interested in, taking some training and earning open digital badges in the future for recognition of being a Bridging Divides leader, you'll be able to do that. And there are more examples on the following slide. And we will definitely be sharing these slides, so I'm not going to go through all of these details. But if any of you in follow-up have questions or want to email me directly afterwards to learn a little bit more, I'd be more than happy to share with you about these. But I am going to turn it over now to my colleague Manu, who is going to talk about one example and possibly the most exciting example we have to share this year of what we are leaning in together to do on a national scale. Manu.
Thanks so much, Carissa, and it's great to meet everybody. And I'm deeply always grateful for the work that Carissa, Pierce, and others do with Listen First and sort of the backbone support that's provided, especially as there's this growing constellation of organizations, some of which you see today, but broadly, I think it's super important to see how we can actually collaborate and collectively impact. And so, as Carissa perfectly teed that up, one of those avenues is this Disagree Better campaign. So I think we can take the slide off just so we can give a break to the slides, and I can sort of talk to you a little bit about what this campaign involves. But before I give context to the campaign, I just want to provide an understanding of why it is that we're actually even thinking about campaigns in 2024. So I lead an organization called Bridge USA, which essentially works with college and high school students across the country. We have college and high school chapters that facilitate dialogue and discussion. And as you can imagine, with all that's happening on campuses, it's a high priority to get young people to have those conversations and do it in productive ways. And yet, the number one question we get asked is, this bridging stuff is great, but it kind of sounds like broccoli. Like it kind of sounds like, feel good. Yes, we should talk to each other, but is there really something here? Is there teeth? Is there impact? And then the second thing we started hearing over the last year or so was a lot of organizations, some that might be on this call, others that might not have been on this call, saying that 2024 represents a really good breakthrough opportunity. And what do they mean by that? Well, we've got this thing called the presidential election coming up in November, and there's growing demand, I think, amongst Americans for something new. And alternatively, there's also, I think, collective sort of misery about what's going to happen, the level of intensity, the toxicity of our politics. So you've got these sort of two things happening, which is, one is there's this like growing appetite for organizations that are on this call, organizations that are not on this call, that are saying, let's do something about how polarized we are. And importantly, does 24 present a breakthrough opportunity? Number two is can we talk about bridge building and a lot of the work that Carissa talked about in a way that actually speaks to the concerns of everyday Americans? How does bridge building resolve your policy concerns? How does bridge building affect whether or not your local mayor is actually solving the problems in their community? And so, given those two reasons, the thought process was, well, can we actually put together one consolidated, impactful message in 24 that we can all get behind in some way? Because if we go after the same resources with multiple different messages and all try to effectively go after the same idea in different ways, I think we're going to leave the American people incredibly confused. And so the thought process was, can we engender a consolidated, impactful effort that gives teeth to why bridge? And not only just why bridge, but how can we actually scale and reach everyday Americans? And so what that resulted in was Disagree Better. The National Governors Association, which is a committee of about 50, well, it has to be 50 given that there's 50 states in the United States, but 50 governors that are Republican, Democrat across the board. And every year they identify an issue to talk about or tackle. And one of those issues identified by the chair of this year's Governor Association was Spencer Cox, the Republican governor of Utah. And he essentially identified the work that the National Civic League is doing, the work that a lot of us are doing, which is essentially, how do we depolarize the country and promote efforts for dialogue amongst Americans? And so they identified that as the effort. And not only that, but the effort they called it was Disagree Better. And so the thought process is, well, we've got amazing governors, Republican, Democrat, you name it, getting behind this idea that we should be thinking about talking to each other across lines of difference, not just for the sake of, some kumbaya, let's hold hands, but for the desire to actually break through and solve our problems. And now we've got a lot of organizations really excited. And so the two missing elements in what we're trying to do over the next year is, we've got organizations, we've got political elites. Can we now do two other things? And what are those two other things? Can we start to enlist culture? Can we start to bring celebrities, those that shape what we call the air game, those that are actually affecting how Americans relate to a lot of this work, into the campaign? And secondarily is, can we start to actually get philanthropy behind it? And so what that essentially looks like over the next year is, we're trying to engender a message that organizations on this call that you right now could actually take action on. You can visit the Disagree Better website, but beyond that, what we're thinking about is, what would it mean for us to start pushing this message in a way in which we're all amplifying on social media, in a way in which our events are getting highlighted under sort of the same roof. And collectively, the thought process is that there's this hunger and there's this demand for a movement this year. And the movement is not built necessarily on ideology, but it's about temperament. It's about how we engage. And what we're seeing in colleges and high schools right now is, there's a tremendous appetite for young people to want to have a banner under which they can actually rally around and say, you know what, I want to start calling out that system of our inability to have conversations, or, you know what, I want to hold our elected officials to higher standard. And so effectively what this campaign does is, it gives everyday people like us the actual social permission calling card to start saying, that behavior is not okay, let's do something about it. And really the objective here is that we think that everybody on this call can actually participate in that in some way or the other. That this is not meant to substitute what you're doing, but it's meant to, again, say that, the work that Village Square is doing, well, you've got multiple governors across the country not only supporting it, but beyond that, you've got elected officials that are now running saying, we got to start disagreeing better because that's what the American people want. So that's a little bit of context on the campaign. You can visit the website. I know that Rebecca is going to pass out a little bit more information in terms of how you can get involved. Kirsten Pierce and others are doing a lot of good work in mobilizing and organizing. And if you find it interesting to jump in on this notion of trying to develop narrative change in the country in 24, all of your input, all your feedback would be really appreciated. So with that, I'll turn it over to my friend and colleague Shelley, who is doing a lot of really interesting work around this and beyond. So Shelley, we'll let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Manu. Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. As a quick introduction, while we get just some quick slides up, my name is Shelley Hoy. I'm the Senior Director for the Belfer Center for Innovation and Social Impact at the 92nd Street Y. Some of you may know of us, many of you may not. For those who don't know us, 92NY is a community and cultural center that is deeply rooted in our home in Manhattan, so at 92nd and Lex. It was founded over just about 150 years ago to serve the Jewish community in New York City. And today, the 92nd Street Y sees thousands of people come through our doors each day in person and tens of millions online every year. We now reach well beyond our core constituency of American Jews to serve people of all backgrounds, promote people's health and well-being, promote civic participation and American pluralism. And that has certainly not been easy for our organization, like so many others right now, and especially over the last couple of months, which I'll spend a couple minutes talking about how we've navigated. The Belfer Center has been around for about a decade and is the 92nd Street Y's innovation engine, building and scaling initiatives that enable change leaders to activate ripples of impact in their places. We're best known for founding Giving Tuesday, and for the last 2 years, we've been building Share Our America, an initiative that serves place-based leaders and organizations like ours across the country and helps them use dialogue as a tool to not only bridge the divides and disconnection, build social cohesion, but work toward that local action and local impact that Manu was talking about. And through our work with Share Our America, and we can jump to the next slide, we've supported schools, Rotary clubs, law enforcement, city governments, faith communities, as they've brought dialogue into their spaces for the first time, engaging with people from very different backgrounds. These sessions lead to greater understanding, respect, trust, social cohesion, all of those impacts that we see on that theory of change that Carissa showed you. And then with that foundation of respect, understanding, empathy, we help leaders use that foundation as a catalyst to make change in their local communities in the way that best serves them, in the direction that they want, so that it serves everyone in their community. And for people who've never participated in a formal dialogue before, the impact tends to surprise people. And this speaks a little to what Manu was saying. Beforehand, participants feel quite anxious and nervous. But coming out of the rooms, after they've had a chance to get to know someone who with a very different perspective than theirs, different identities, participants are actually quite inspired. And this is, not just the case with our work, it's the case with so many of my peers and those on the call. Not only do participants report a greater understanding for people very different from them, greater respect, they report improved communication skills and plans to take what they learned from these sessions and bring them back to their families and friends. They want to see more bridge building after they've felt it and experienced it. We've also seen that 95% of our participants plan to take action in their communities coming out of the sessions. And again, for people who haven't done dialogue before, this might be surprising. But what ends up happening is folks build relationships with people they otherwise would never have met. And that is inspiring because so much of the time, a lot of the blockers that local folks are facing, and especially us also within our communities, is that collaboration is really hard when we can't talk to each other. And so what happens is once you can talk to each other, you can communicate, you build those relationships. Now you can collaborate, you can build working groups, and we've started to see that happen, where participants create a working group to solve a local issue or advocate for new policy change. We've seen the dialogue can be an incredible civic activator and motivator. And this work of bringing together people who are very different in conversation, of course, is incredibly challenging. And especially right now, issues of political division intersect with issues of faith, race, mental health, and social isolation. It's all interrelated, and especially at a local level, organizations and leaders in positions of service and who are already serving their communities in some way are really feeling this acutely, and are in positions to help and work toward local solutions and collaborate with other organizations they're a part of. And like the many community organizations we serve through our Share Our America work, we've struggled with divisions in our own community at the 92nd Street Y. So I'll share a little bit of that as an example of how organizations can use dialogue. And for us as an organization that serves our community and serves the folks in our geography and in our place, and many others online, if we as an organization are feeling those disconnections, that division internally, then we can't serve others, and we can't, work as effectively. And so I think we can probably drop the slides off now. So as you can imagine, balancing 92NY's commitment as a Jewish institution with the pluralistic ethos of our programming and the diversity of our community and staff has been incredibly challenging since October 7th. Conflicts arose among our community, and we realized that we needed to take action to ensure that 92NY could remain a place where people from different backgrounds and who hold different perspectives can work together respectfully. So to start working toward a solution, we looked to the initiative that we have been creating for the last 2 years, Share Our America, and looked to that community-based work and called it Share Our 92NY. We rolled out a series of sessions to our staff. We've run this is still very much an in-progress initiative. We've run 4 sessions so far, reached almost half of our full-time staff, and plan to run more sessions through the rest of the calendar year. And during these sessions, we're running structured dialogue, where we not only create a space for staff and community members to share their different perspectives and stories with each other, but we also collect ideas for ways to increase belonging among our community. And we're starting to implement some of those ideas, ranging from a staff-wide storytelling initiative to regular lunches and clubs to create more opportunities for connection. This is just a start, and dialogue is not the end solution. It's a starting point for communities. And we have seen that in our own place and in our own organization. And I would encourage all communities and organizations to really reflect on that, and what can we do in our own backyard and in our programming. And we all know on this call that communities and organizations are struggling right now. It's going to take all of us, movements, campaigns, civic innovations, collaborations between organizations, elected officials, local businesses, to ensure that our country can remain one where reasonable disagreement is not only possible, but it strengthens our communities and helps us remain resilient in times of crisis, because we're seeing those breaks right now. And the 92nd Street Y, the Belfer Center, Share Our America, we are just some of the thousands of organizations taking initiative in towns and cities across the country already doing really impactful bridge building work, doing local peace building and mediation work, hoping to build greater civic and social infrastructure. Some of these organizations not represented on this call, just call out Essential Partners, Urban Rural Action, the Trust Network, organizations like Civic Lex in Kentucky, the Los Angeles Bridge Builders Collective. And it's going to take all of us working together and working individually from different angles to make meaningful and lasting change for our country. And we're not doing enough today. We're feeling that now. So the last thing I want to share is the Disagree Better campaign is a really wonderful way to get involved in bridge building work in 2024. Another role that I hold is serving as co-chair for BMAC's place-based working group, convening dozens of place-based leaders to collaborate with each other and take collective action. And we've heard from many of these organizations that this campaign could be a wonderful opportunity for them to create new partnerships with other folks in their places, but also new partnerships with elected officials, and different types of bringing in new audiences, greater visibility for the wonderful work happening already, but an opportunity to really amp it up, and bring in new collaborators, new voices, local media. And so I would encourage you to reflect on where you are and your place, and whether this campaign could be a good fit for you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us, to reach out to me if you want to get involved or are seeking collaborations where you are based. Quick shout out to Listen First and the rest of the BMAC group, because these are vast networks of organizations who care about doing this work and are ready to collaborate and work with others who may not have, done dialogue before, not done kind of bridge building events before. And I just want to end by saying that there is hope. The vast majority of Americans think we can rebuild our trust in one another. That's 86% of Americans think we can rebuild our trust in one another. And that hope is what drives our work. Thank you very much. And hand it over to the wonderful Liz Joyner from the Village Square.
Thank you so much, Shelley. We've seen the hope. And while we're getting the slide up, just by way of introduction, I'm Liz Joyner, founder and CEO of the Village Square. We've seen it firsthand in communities. We were founded when there was an incredibly divisive community issue that made us realize there was no place that we really could gather and have conversations with each other. We're devoted to building civic trust between people who don't look or think alike in American hometowns. And we've been a part of civic life in Tallahassee, Florida for 18 years now, and in Fort Lauderdale, Florida through Broward College for a decade. The next slide shows some of the various big public programs the Village Square hosts in the form of various series of programs that focus on drawing in different populations from the community. We started with Dinner at the Square. We added in Created Equal, The Longest Table, Local Color, an annual town hall that hosts city and county commissioners, Speed Date Your Local Leaders, and God Squad. Our mascot is a flying pig. In 2024, we're launching the Flying Pig Academy, where we're teaching our model to other hometowns. So we'll have digital programming that you can participate in. We focus on interventions to strengthen the entire community's civic life. So we're thinking of, we host big public programs. We provide a presence that way inside of our communities for gathering across differences of color, creed, and ideology. And we're kind of a constant presence in the community that regularly is making the argument that our differences are a strength to engage and embrace, and not a cause to avoid each other. We believe in and have seen the power of these face-to-face gatherings, that positive contact and finding something that you have in common with each other can change everything about the divisive times that we're in. We host about 15 to 20 of these large gatherings a year. We focus on making them socially very compelling, even fun when we possibly can. Even as we take on topics that are challenging, that we describe it as topics your mother told you to not discuss in polite company: politics, religion, and race. And we head straight at those issues in sort of an environment of embracing relationships of respect with each other. I brought a photo album along so you can see what the Village Square looks like in real time. The next slide is our Created Equal program, a series we've hosted for 9 years now with Leon County government, a conversation about race and founding ideals in our hometown. That's a venue that hosts 450 people, and we often will get 1,000 registrations for the program. In the next slide, you'll see we're the originators of The Longest Table in partnership with the City of Tallahassee, Leon County government, and Leadership Tallahassee, literally 100 tables end to end in the middle of a downtown street. Longest Table is very portable, and it's now hosted in cities across America. The next slide shows our local color program. We've been doing this for about 7 years, addressing and celebrating differences across color, creed, and ideology, focusing on drawing in a young audience. We build the capacity to have these more challenging conversations. This venue is about 150. It's very nightclubish, but we build the capacity to make it a real and important conversation through our core catalyst model. So the people up at the front of the room there have met before, they know each other well, they've had deep and real conversations, and we've learned that we can bring a whole room full of people along into that meaningful conversation through that model. And you can see in the next slide that actually this is an example of our smaller core catalyst group meeting and getting to know each other. We actually did it for a whole year before we launched this big community-wide local color project. In the next slide, you can see that we're with government and local elected officials. We took over a coffee shop on a Sunday, like they used to do in the old London pub culture, where citizens then brainstormed engagement ideas in small groups and did their presentations. And then we awarded a mini grant in real time to the winning idea. We do that annually in some capacities and regularly. And again, going from sort of the smaller, more cohesive groups that know each other but are very diverse across every dimension to the larger community-wide events. Next is our local color group again, and we hope that you will check us out online to either start a village square, to participate in Flying Pig Academy. We offer pairs of speakers who can come to your community who disagree with each other across a substantial friendship. And you don't have to start a village square to get engaged with the work we do. We also offer digital programs in partnership with Florida Humanities and a podcast called Village Squarecast. And now I'm going to hand you back to Carissa.
Thanks, Liz. So that was a lot of information, and there's a lot more information from a number of our other partners. You are more than welcome to go to our website at listenfirstproject.org. We have a page filled with information specific to BMAC and a page with our coalition members and the offerings that they have from their own organizations. I just wanted to highlight here, and I'm not going to go into it, that every year the Bridging Movement Alignment Council gathers in December to have an annual kind of reflection on what we've done, a look at some of the critical issues that we have addressed in the past, and then really forward looking to what are we going to lean in together to prioritize and accomplish in the coming year? And so I wanted to just highlight that at the end of the slide deck, you will receive in a follow-up email, I have put the video clips of our annual gathering from this past year. There's our very enthusiastic CEO, Pierce Godwin of Listen First, who is making opening remarks. But you'll find about 5 or 6 slides in here that if you're interested in looking at them, it'll give you a even greater flavor of what BMAC is all about. This one right here that we're seeing is specifically about the Disagree Better campaign that Manu talked about today. So there's a segment in the slides that talks about the campaign at large from an operational standpoint. And then another slide that actually is a recording of the conversation that Pierce got to have with NGA Chair Utah Governor Spencer Cox, who is the creator of the idea of Disagree Better. And this is a very powerful segment. And if you're interested in tuning in, all of the links are there for you. So I just wanted to highlight that. And with that, I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Carissa, Manu, Shelley, Liz, for sharing your great work, both at the kind of national high level and then giving us those place-based examples as well. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. So feel free to use the raise hand feature or just jump in or put your questions in the chat. I'm going to start off with a question that I had and more of a request for more information about this. Shelley, as you were speaking, you said something, a turn of phrase that I'm going to borrow from here on out. You said bridging can be a civic activator. And that's something that really stands out to me at the National Civic League. We always, the bridge community and bridging work is a little tangential to what we do, but I also think is essential, because I don't think you can have civic engagement and civic action unless you can at least communicate with one another. And so I'm wondering, and I hate to put you on the spot a little bit here, you mentioned that your Share America campaign has resulted in some interesting conversations. You've kind of broken down that divide and has turned into civic activation. Do you have any examples of an instance of when that has happened?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I can speak to a couple of examples. So we partnered with a school district in Pennsylvania, along with a couple local police chiefs. And we brought together police officers with young people, mostly young people of color, high school students, with their parents and school administrators. And so we ran gathering sessions with them. As you can imagine, especially the students, when I walked into that room, police were on one side of the room, kids were on the other, and you see very clearly the divide. I think a lot of us who've been in a lot of these spaces see that. And folks shared how nerve-wracking that was at the beginning. And so what ended up happening throughout, where we are strategically placing young people with adults, with police, at tables together. What ended up coming out of that series of sessions was that everyone wanted to work, and a vast majority, most people, whether students, police, wanted to work together to make sure that how interactions between police and students happen, both in the school environment, but also just in the community, that there's more, that we can start from a different place. And so what they did was the school, coming out of that series, the school leaders who were present convened, all 7 police chiefs, only, 2 of whom participated in this, in a separate event, separate discussion on how can we change policy on, how police respond in our school. And some of the students, have been reflecting on that. The school DEI professionals are committing to regular dialogue sessions. So that kind of institutionalization will continue to lead to more civic action. So that's one example. In another example, in Pennsylvania, faith leaders, together with local NAACP, police, school officials, the local United Way, convened in a dialogue. They weren't sure what they wanted going into that, but coming out, they've put together a working group to work toward a more safe community. And they don't know what that looks like yet, but they're meeting regularly, and that kind of regular cadence, might lead to policy change. We're only starting to see the indicators of kind of which groups are working toward local policy change, if that's, a structural thing that feels like it needs changing where they are, or if it's institutionalizing these ideas and these concepts. And so we're seeing lots of different early indicators that move in different directions. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those sort of tangible, precise examples. I think that helps to bring the more abstract concept down for some people. So thanks for sharing that. And then my next question, feel free anyone to interrupt me, because I'll just take over all the time unless someone unmutes themselves and asks a question, is for those of you involved in the Disagree campaign, Disagree Better campaign. Can you talk a little bit about I guess from two audiences. One, there are I see some city government leaders on the call, and then of course we have just kind of our everyday civic leaders, as we call them. Speaking directly to those two audiences, how might someone who is a city manager of a small community in Ohio get their city involved, and then how might just someone who's actively engaged in their community participate in this campaign?
Yeah, Carissa, do you want to take that, or you want me to go for it?
I definitely have some thoughts, but I'm happy for you to share yours, and then I'll follow up.
Okay, and I think that actually Carissa's thoughts are going to be much more tangible to that question, because I know that you've been thinking a lot about local city and elected official engagement. The only two things that I would say is that as a city official and as a city manager, I think the first thing, and this builds off of Shelley's, I think, statistic towards the end about hope, which is that I think that your constituents and the people that are actually there will reward you for this work. I think one of the things that we've seen across the board is that it is actually to people's both electoral and legislative advantage to exercise and model that their city is committed to disagreeing better. And so the second question is, how do you actually get involved? And I think the one thing I would say there is, beyond sort of visiting the website and seeing the area, and there's a section for how different avenues and different audiences can get involved. The big thing that we're working on is we think that it would be really valuable to get, just like we have the governors, the mayors to be talking across lines of difference. What would it mean to have state legislatures actually exercising and talking across difference? And the value in being a city manager and a city official is that most of the issues that everyday Americans care about are issues that are actually in your area of responsibility and expertise. And them being able to draw the correct line between their lives being better and their city officials actually exercising this ethos, I think will be hugely, hugely powerful and impactful. So Carissa, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've got in mind?
Absolutely. Thanks, Manu. That was great. And I think I'll start by saying, if you are interested, there is a place for you in this campaign, regardless of the position you hold. One of the things that the Disagree Better campaign aims to do is really be a call, to our political leaders and elected officials to help us role model what it means to behave in a manner that doesn't shun disagreement, but helps us to cultivate healthy parameters around what civil disagreement can look like. Our country was founded on disagreement. We need that. It sparks innovation. And so in that way, though, I look at this as an opportunity for all Americans to reflect on the role that they play as leaders in their community. I mean, everybody. If you are a basketball coach, if you are a soccer mom, if you are someone's boss, if you are a lead of a church group or a faith-based group, you have a leadership role. And so really, it's had an impact on me myself in holding up the mirror to say, all right, what are the examples in my life of where I can model healthier disagreement? So that's the broad overview. Now, the tangible, what can we do? There are going to be a slew of activities, events, and opportunities really for you all to lean in. I think Liz did a great job exemplifying some of the things that, from a longest table event. I will disclose my previous, I previously worked actually in local government in Florida and was an assistant director of a city department, and having our city manager and our elected officials lean into activities such as convening a longest table, or even having a town hall where you invite a third-party moderator to come in and listen to the challenges or the concerns that constituents have over a particular issue. Making it okay and creating the space for that dialogue to happen is a step towards bridge building. I'll also say that we have a pretty exciting opportunity with a film festival coming up in in April. Between the week of April 15th and 21st, we're going to be putting out an opportunity for really any venue in the country, whether you're a Y, whether you're a church, if you're a museum, a library, a city hall, a university. We would invite you to host a screening of one of the films that a team has kind of curated as exemplifying bridging behaviors. And this film festival will include conversation guides with each of these films. And so that the host venue, in addition to screening a film, will then become a space for that dialogue to take place. And will link you back to the myriad of organizations on a place-based and national level that can help you to continue those types of collaborations. So if you are interested in that, you can get in touch with me and there will be more to come. And there are several other examples. I would share the Disagree Better website, which I'll put into the chat if it hasn't already. And there is a section of that page where there's examples of things that everyday Americans can do, communities can do, and politically we can do. That website may be updated to include even more opportunities in the near future. So I would, if you're interested, do the thing that makes it become part of your toolbar so it's easy access, because we'll have a lot of interesting things to share going forward.
Great. Thank you so much for those tangible ways that folks can get involved. I think what I want to end with, well, one is just my question for Liz is, can you please get Tallahassee to apply for the All-America City Award?
Yes, I will do my best.
Thank you. I would love to see those efforts celebrated and highlighted. And then my closing question to each of my speakers, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, is I still consider we're in January, so this is the new year. What does success this year look like for your organization? We're sitting around at a table at December 31st, about to ring in the new year. What does success look like for you all?
So for at the Village Square, we're focused very intently on making sure that all of our events include the range of humans that exist in our community. And so we're doing some very intentional work around that to strengthen our big public events. And then also, I guess I wanted to also say that to us, the Disagree Better campaign and this amazing kind of national presence that's being built and popped up and strengthened through groups like Listen First are a real opportunity as somebody who's sat in for 18 years in a community up view of what's happening in America. Sometimes it feels like, whether you're an elected official, whether you're a regular citizen, or whether you're an organization like us, sometimes it feels like you can't quite gain the momentum. The people are there who want to see this built out into the world. And so to us this year is an opportunity to connect our local energy and enthusiasm to be a part of a greater whole. And so that's what success looks like to us this coming year, especially in election year.
Worthy and attainable. Yes, thanks, Shelley.
Yeah, I'll quickly share. We hope to recruit thousands more individuals, community leaders, organizations across the country into bridge building for the first time. So folks who aren't doing it already, who are serving their communities. And we hope to really deepen our collaborative work as we reflect on the need for just all of us to be in this together and work together. To Liz's point, looking at those strategic collaborations and what can we do together that we can't do individually, and how can we really elevate the stories of folks and provide people a platform, and just all work toward this really tough challenge. That's where we're focused.
Building a little bit off of what Shelley said, One thing by the way, I just want to highlight from the presentations, the work that Liz is doing in Tallahassee is so exportable to other cities. And so like if you're in a city, like those menu of items, whether it's the longest table or you're thinking about hosting 2 speakers, like I found those to be very, very easy for people to be able to replicate. So just a huge shout out to the work you're doing there.
And we'd love that to do that with you all in any form and in any size.
Exactly. And in fact, like this is a great example what the Disagree Better campaign can look like is if we brand those events as Disagree Better, suddenly then you can have access to political leaders and governors at those events, and it just creates a virtuous cycle. And so in general, hopefully that's just my plant in explaining how this could actually be a tangible partnership for everybody on this call. I would just broadly say 2 things. So one is that every Monday we host this podcast called The Hopeful Majority, and we did a presidential candidate series in 2023, and we were ending it with conversations with different people running for president. And one of the things that was obvious was that we'd have these great, 2-hour long conversations with these people, and they were just so down to earth and honest and authentic and able to disagree constructively. And so the question we would ask at the end was like, why do we not see this behavior replicated nationally? And the question that kept coming back was, the incentive structures don't exist. If you want to run for office and you want the most votes, you say the craziest things because only 10% of people vote in our primaries, right? If you want to build a social media following, you say the craziest things so that the algorithm promotes your views. I mean, on a podcast, I have to resist that like every week. I try to not be a crazy person, and yet that's something that oftentimes you get incentivized to do. And the second observation is that I think all of us would agree as you see the work taking place that I think our assumption is not that the majority of Americans are highly polarized and divided. It's that you have a vocal minority of people across the ideological spectrum imposing their closed-mindedness on an exhausted majority. And if you operate with that assumption, the question then becomes, how are we actually going to elevate that exhausted majority? How are we going to give people the social permission structure to start saying that we have to call out that toxic behavior, that toxic politics? The amount of times that any of us are in our communities and you hear people talking to each other and they say, man, I'm just exhausted by this. We got to fix it. And so what success looks like, whether it's for Bridge USA in colleges and high schools, but just also broadly for the field, from my standpoint is we need to actually start showing our elected officials and the people that are in power that the majority of Americans are actually not okay with the level of polarization that we see, and that we actually demand something better. And suddenly you start to see a whole shift in behavior. And I think that this year could be a really, really good opportunity to actually lay the foundation for a lot of that. That's my thought. And Rebecca, thanks for organizing this.
Thank you for that.
Carissa?
Yeah, I guess my 2 thoughts on what success would look like is everybody on this meeting would adopt a opportunity for leaning into bridging work. That whether that's under Disagree Better or in another avenue that feels more appropriate to you, that either you continue doing the great work you're already doing to bridge divides, or if this is a new realm for you, reach out to one of us and let us learn from you about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then help to identify the organization and our myriad of 500 coalition partners that would be a good fit for you. So that's one, is take action, do something that will help us be successful. And then number 2, on a broader scale, gosh, I would love to see some leaning in from and we're getting some, buy-in to this, but how cool will it be if we have, Coke and Pepsi in in the same 6-pack? How cool will it be when we have Ronald McDonald and Wendy sitting down together to have lunch over, a conversation? Those cultural phenomenons that are corporate leaders and from more of a social cultural side of our country can lean into. I'd love for those things to happen, because I think that's how we're going to take this out of being just something that is a call for political leaders, but really an opportunity for everyone across America to see, wow, we don't have to be so polarized in literally every element of our being. Our culture now is unification.
I love that. Thank you so much for those Parting thoughts and aspirations for the year. To help you reach those aspirations, we'll be sending out recording as well as the slides, as well as links to those resources and avenues that you could get involved, and in Chris's words, do something. So thank you all for being here. Thank you again to all of our speakers. We put on our monthly webinar series usually the last week of every month. We're going to be focusing on how to have better public meetings and some really cool work that our Democracy Innovation Center here at the League is doing on an update to that campaign. So tune in for that in February, and I hope our paths cross again. Thank you, everyone.